In this third video on CSS layout, I will show you how to finish this page by creating the footer and another fixed layout element at the top of the page. So as you see in the finished page, at the bottom of the page I have a full width footer. Typically you'll see the footer in websites holding things like copyright information, links to the privacy policy, terms and conditions, and some footers also have a repeat of all the pages of the site, links to all the pages of the website in the footer. In this example, I'll be creating a simple footer with just some placeholder text. I will also create a fixed position element at the top, which will not scroll when we scroll the window. Now, as you see in Design View, when I scroll, that image does go with the rest of the page. But this is because Design View does not give you an exact representation of what the web browser will see. Design View is somewhat of an approximation that shows you a visual layout of the main elements of your page. It does show the fonts in most cases. It shows the divs, it shows the margins, spacing, and the floats, but it does not render things like fixed position elements. To do that, I need to switch Design View to Live View. As you notice, Dreamweaver reloads the page, and in Live View, Dreamweaver is actually running a web browser internally. So what you see in Live View is exactly what a typical web browser would see. So now in Live View, as I scroll the page, you notice the fixed position element stays exactly where it is as the rest of the page scrolls. I'll go back to Design View for now, and we will get started on creating these elements in my work page. So this is how I left the page in the second video. We have the header, the section, the columns, a heading, and a paragraph. I'm going to add a footer, and the place to add the footer is at the end of the body, but before the closing body tag. So if you look at my code, my section ends here, and my page body ends here. So I'm going to insert a new line here. I'll go up to the end of the section. After that, make sure my cursor is blinking in an empty area, and I hit enter to create a new line. This is where I'm going to insert the footer. So I go up to the insert menu and click footer. Header, footer, and section are special tags in HTML since HTML version 5. Before that, we would create headers, sections, footers, and more using the div tag. So I click footer. At insertion point is perfect. I'm not assigning it any class or ID, so I just hit enter. Now Dreamweaver has created a footer and put some placeholder text. I will replace this text with this is a footer. So there are a few styles that I want to assign to this footer, but before I do that, I need to give it a selector in CSS. So I'm going to click on the footer on the boundary of the footer, so the whole footer is selected. I go up to my CSS designer and click plus next to selectors. As before, Dreamweaver adds the word body here, but I don't really need it. I'm going to remove it, and my selector will just say footer. So there are a few things I want to change here. First, my footer is going to be full width, so I assign it a width of 100%. I'm going to give it a height of about 40 pixels, or let's say a little more. Okay. And I'll give it a background color of some kind of a dark blue. Generally, it's good to have somewhat of a darker or more muted color for the footer. Many sites use dark gray footers because this is the base of your page, so it gives a grounded feeling. There are other websites that have no background color at all, so they don't differentiate the footer from the rest of the page, but they use a line or some other graphic element to divide it from the section above. and that's okay too. Now because my footer background color is dark blue, the black text is kind of hard to read in front of it. So I'm going to change the text color of my footer to white. In the CSS designer, I can go to text. Because I have my footer selector chosen, this property of text color will only affect the footer. So I click on color and choose white. And one more thing. Now my footer has automatically appeared at the bottom, but in certain pages when you have columns and other things that have the float property, to make sure that the elements that follow those are not trying to appear in the same line, but they are forced to appear below them in a new line, you can set the clear property. It's under layout. Just below float, you have clear. So the float property causes elements to show up side by side in the same row, whereas the clear property forces an element to start in a new row, ignoring or bypassing the floats that came before it. So you can have clear left, which will clear or bypass all the float left properties that were set above it. You can have clear right, which will clear all the elements with float right that came above it. Or you can have clear both, which will clear elements that were floated left and elements that were floated right and sit below both of them. So I'm going to set clear to both. Even though in this case it wasn't necessary, I wanted to show you that if you have floating elements, it's good to follow that up with a cleared element so that they're on different screen sizes, you will not run into the problem of too many elements trying to sit in the same row. So here's my footer. It's got dark blue background, white text, full width, about 50 pixels height. I can also give it a little bit of margin above it so that there's a space between the end of the section and the start of the footer. So I'm going to give this footer a top margin of about, let's try 20 pixels. Okay, so you can see here that's the 20 pixel space between my footer and my section. You can adjust this to your liking. So that completes the footer. I am going to save all, which saves the HTML and the CSS. I'm going to go to my page in Chrome and refresh it. And there's my footer at the bottom of the page. Now let's say I wanted to center align the footer text so it appears here. I can do that quite easily. So if I want to center align this text in the middle of the footer, I select my footer in the CSS designer, go up to text properties, find text align and change that to center. Now that center aligns my text, and also if I want a little breathing room between the text and the top of the footer, then as we did in the last video, we can use padding to do that. I'm going to add some top padding to my footer of about 10 pixels so that my text has a little breathing room above it. Again, I'll just save all and go and reload the page in Chrome, and there you have it. The last thing I'm going to create on this page is this fixed position div at the top above the header. So to do this, I need to position my cursor before the start of the header. So I go down to my code section, scroll up. So here's the beginning of the page body, and here's the beginning of the page header. In between these two, I'm going to just add a new line, go up to Insert and click on Div. So I'm inserting this div at the insertion point. This time I'm going to give it a class which is called Fixed. Now as you remember, when you're trying to assign a class to your div, do not click OK because there's a bug currently in Dreamweaver which makes sure that the class will not get assigned. So instead of clicking OK, After I type my class name, I press Enter on the keyboard. Now I have a div of class fixed. I'll replace this placeholder text. So now I can go ahead and style this class using CSS. I have my cursor in this fixed position div. I'm going to go up to selectors and click plus. So Dreamweaver assigns it the selector .fixed, which refers to the class fixed. Just in case Dreamweaver does not write the correct selector here, if it happens to, if your cursor happened to be somewhere else and it doesn't give you the right selector, you can either delete the selector, the unwanted selector, by clicking minus, then position your cursor in the right place and add a selector again, or the quicker way to do that, if you know exactly what you want to select and how to write the selector, again, this is if you know what you're doing, you can just replace or edit this selector name and Dreamweaver will take whatever you give it. So in this case, Dreamweaver did get it right, .fixed. So I hit enter. Again, I'm going to set a width of 100%, a height of about 40 pixels. I'm going to give it a background color, which is like a pale gold. Now, why do people create these fixed element divs? On some websites, they hold the menu. You might have seen websites where as you scroll, the navigation menu stays in the same place along with the company's logo and stuff. That's one reason why you would use a fixed element div at the top of the page. There are other cases when you go to a site and they have a special offer going on, and they want to highlight that special offer at the top of the page and make sure that you see it. So they would create a fixed position div at the top, give it a bright color, and then make it fixed position so that as you scroll the page, you always see the special offer that's going on. So in this case, I have set the width, height, and the background color. To make this a fixed position div, here's what I do. I'm going to go back to Layout, scroll past Margin and Padding till you get to Position. There are different kinds of positioning that you can apply in HTML and CSS. For this particular div, I'm going to choose Fixed. So I click on where it said Static and click Fixed. Now, in the design view, that doesn't make a difference because it scrolls. But if I change to Live View, you can see that my fixed position div stays in the same place as I scroll the page. I'll head back to Design View, save all, and then go into the browser and reload. So here's my fixed position div at the top of the page, then the header, then the section with 3 columns. My fixed position div stays exactly in the same place as I scroll. And then at the bottom I have the section, the paragraph, and the footer. So this completes the CSS layout tutorial, and I've shown you several popular ways and very useful ways of laying out a page, aligning elements, spacing elements, and positioning elements using HTML and CSS. As a last step, I'm going to upload this website to my server just to give you a refresher on how we upload the whole site. So after having clicked Save All to make sure everything is saved, I go to the Files window in Dreamweaver. So I'm going to click the Plug button to connect to my UH server. Once it's connected, I will click on the site folder, click the up arrow button, and it says, are you sure you wish to put the entire site? Yes, we are, because we want to put up the HTML and the CSS files. Just one is not going to do. So I'm going to click OK. Dreamweaver goes through and uploads everything. And in my browser, I'll open a new tab just to be sure. and I type in the full path of the page starting with the www2, hit enter, and that's my finished page.